Okay, welcome to part 2 of this tutorial series. Just before we sort of start on the rest of this function, I just want to explain this array stuff here, because this line is obviously very confusing. So we have three functions here. The range function is the first one, well, the innermost one. Oh, by the way, I've just created this test.php file, which I've opened here. It's blank at the moment, and I've also got that open in a new tab. It used to have PHP info in it, now it's blank. So I just want to demonstrate these functions a little bit here. So say we have, let's just define array1, whoops, as range A to D. And if we just print this out using print underscore R array1, and if I reload this page now, you see we get this array which has A, B, C and D in it. So that's how the range function works. That's not particularly complicated. So if we define array2, whoops, as range let's say 0 to 5, and print out array2, you see we get a new array which has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little bit pointless here because of the keys being the same as the values. It's a bit odd, I suppose. So that's that, the range function, not too complicated. Now, array merge, so we can we'll join these two arrays. I'll just demonstrate that as well. So let's define a new array called combined, and this can be equal to array merge, array1 and array2. If we print this out, combined, so we get a new array, a whole array, which is sort of array2 stuck on the end of array1. So we have A, B, C, D, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's what we were doing. That's what we were doing here. We're creating a very big array, basically. So I can just actually copy this and just show you what it results in. Actually, no, I'll do array flip first. Right. Ignore that little rambly bit there. Okay, so the array rand function is the other one. So say if we just define the new variable called random, this is going to be equal to array rand 10, because that's how many we want. If I just print this out now, just got random, and reload this. Whoops, what have I done? Okay, that was silly. Right, yeah, ignore that. Combined 10. Okay, so we get this sort of length 10 array which has sort of randomly ordered numbers. No, it doesn't. Why don't we? Okay. What have I done? Okay, yeah, not long enough. Let's just make this a bit longer. 9. Okay, now you see we get the sort of values changing. What these values are keys that correspond to the array we're passing in. And each of these is obviously random, so you can use it to pick out 10 random values. What we want is obviously the we want the values, we don't want the keys. So because we have unique values, we can just use this on an array of keys. So badly explaining, sorry. Let's demonstrate array flip first. So let's say we have well, do it on array 1. We could well, let's just do it here. Let's do print underscore R array flip array flip array1. If I just load this now, you see we get an array similar to before, except the values have become the keys. So hopefully you can see how this is sort of fitting together. I just did it all on one line because this is sort of a big chunk. I wanted to keep the code to a minimum. So I will do a video on array manipulation, but I just wanted to make that clear for this. Okay, so moving on. Right, so after we have sort of flipped this array, the big array, we need to sort of get the random values from it. We're going to define this new variable called AID, activation ID, and that's going to be equal to, whoops, array rand of char set, and we want 10 characters. Okay, so that will now be an array of characters, but we want a string. So we're just going to implode this. The implode function has been mentioned before, so I'm going to go over that here. Implode on an empty string, we just want to join all the array elements together. Okay, so that's that. Now we have an activation ID that we can use in our query here, AID, and that's this function, well, mostly complete. The email is the next thing we're going to add. That's going to come after the activation ID has been generated here and before the database inserts. And what we're going to do is define a body variable. So we're going to set that equal to the, I've forgotten which one this is. This syntax. It's either the now doc or the here doc. I've forgotten which one. Here, maybe? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Basically, it's the same as a double quoted string-ish. And rather annoyingly, you have to define the end of it like that. You can't have it indented. So, yeah. So everything in between this sort of block here will become effectively the same as being inside double quotes. So in here, we're just going to write out sort of the body of the email message. The reason I'm doing this is because new lines are preserved. So let's just say something. Well, actually, I don't know. Okay, I've got a message over here that I've got copy. I'm going to copy it in just to speed this up a bit. So that's the email body that we're going to be sending. So it's kind of equivalent to doing this, which is bad. It looks messy. Oh, and the final semicolon is optional, but I just like it for consistency. And obviously the big point here is that you can use variables inside it. Okay, so this is our email message. Hi, thanks for registering. Before you log in, you need to activate your account. To do that, simply click the following link. And then this link would obviously be your website. But I'm working off my local server, so I've just used the IP address and the path to the activate.php file. And then we're using question mark and AID equals activation ID, which is the activation ID we generated up here. So that's defining the body now, so that's that done. The next thing we want to do is actually send the email. And we're going to do that using the PHP's mail function, which I've also mentioned before, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. It takes 4 parameters. One of them is optional. Parameters it takes are the email address that you want to send it to. So the sort of to address, which is just email, the email address they entered. Then the subject. So the subject can be your new account at betterphp.co.uk. Okay, so that's the subject defined, I guess. The next parameter is the body. The reason we're doing that in a variable, not just in line, is because it would look a horrible mess if we did it in line. It would work, it just looked horrible. Okay, so that's that. And the final parameter is a sort of additional headers parameter. So, yeah, that's that. And the header we're supplying is from. The from header, you have to supply this really. I'm just going to say admin at .co.uk, which isn't actually an email address, so don't send it anything. Yeah. Okay, so that is that function sort of complete. We can test this by just registering a new user and seeing what happens. So if I go, I'll just close this test page, we're done with that now. So if I go to a register page, hit reload, let's type in a new user, let's call it Bob. And the email address has to be, oh, that stupid bug, okay. Good. Test1 at php.co.uk. Just going to copy that actually. The password can just be test and test. Hit register. Don't get any errors, which is a good sign. We browse our users table, just log back in. We see this user has been added, and so is the random code with the user ID. So that MySQL insert ID function will have returned this 1 because MySQL generates this 1 by itself. So there you go, and then we've inserted that into this other table along with the random string that's been generated. So yeah, that's pretty much it for registration. If I just check our emails, go back to inbox, we haven't got an email. Why is that? I guess it might just be taking a while. That seems kind of unlikely. Let's just go back and check our code. Actually, did I spell my email address right? I could check that by looking in the database. One more time, okay. Users. No, okay. I have to do a new registration, so Ignore all that. Well, don't ignore it, it's valid. It tested the syntax at least. So let's just register Carl, the email address with the E, and the password can be test as well, and test as well. Whoops, test. Hit register. Check the database. See we have ID of 2, the correct email address. See ID of 2 and new random code. And then we have the email appears, so we can open this up. And we have this message, and we have this link. Notice that the random code is the same one that's in the table. So what we need to do next is code the activate file. Well, actually, I suppose first we should do the login page. So because now we have an account that isn't active, so we can test it. So let's go to the login page. Obviously, at the moment, the login page does not do any checks sort of at all for the for if the account is active or not. So what we need to do is create a function that will tell us if the account is active that we can use in these checks here. So we go back to our backend file, and we are going to create an isActive function, and we're going to put that under this valid credentials function. So let's just call it function isActive, active, and it's going to take the username as its parameter, single parameter. Okay, so what we need to do is obviously escape this using the annoyingly long function. Let's go real escape string, real string, escape string, like so, and the user parameter goes there. So then, yeah, that's escaped basically. Again, if you don't know what that means or what I'm doing, check out my SQL injection video because I'll explain that there. Okay, because the SQL for this query is quite long, we're going to define a SQL variable, and that's going to be, well, the SQL is going to be select, whoops, count user activations dot user ID. Just in case I haven't mentioned it at all, this is the table and this is the column. So we're selecting the sort of number of rows in the activations column, in the activations table, where the username is the one that they supply. But because we don't store the username in the activations column, we store the user ID, we need to join the users table. We're actually going to select from the users table and inner join the other table, user activations, that's what it's called, user activations. And what we're going to be joining on is the fact that users.userid is equal to user activations dot user ID, like so. And obviously we need a where condition, so where users dot username is equal to the username that they have supplied or that we've passed into the function, which is just the user variable. Okay, so that's our SQL defined. Next we need to actually perform the query, so we're going to define this result as MySQL query of SQL, and then we need to return true if this returns 0 rows, because remember 0 rows in the activations table means that the user has been activated. So I'm going to return MySQL results, like so, of the result, the query result, 0, and if that is equal to 0, return true, if not, return false. Okay, so we've used this before, in fact we've used it here, so it's not overly complicated. I've got a video on basics stuff, so logic operators I think is in there. So go and watch that if you know what I'm doing. Okay, so we're going to end this video here. Now we have this isActive function. In the next part I'm going to be using this in the login page to make sure that the account is active before allowing the login. Okay, so thanks for watching, and join me in part 3 where we'll do that thing that I just said.